Hi, creative people. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Catherine Petricelli, and you are watching a bonus episode of the brand new podcast, Melody or Witchcraft. And today we're giving you a little bit of a sneak peek behind the scenes on some of the process of getting the podcast going. And we're going to be talking about the music, the theme music, specifically by singer and songwriter Emma Wallace. Hi, Emma. Thanks
Hi,
for
so glad
being
to be
here.
here.
Yeah,
I'm
so
so
later
happy to be
on, later on, Emma is going to be performing live the song that is going to serve as the theme song for Melody or Witchcraft, this new podcast venture. And I'm super, super excited to have this music associated with the podcast. So it's called I'm Nobody, based on one of the very famous Emily Dickinson poems. But we will get to all of that story in just a little bit. First, I just want to give you a little bit more of a background about what to anticipate, what you can expect in the podcast, and the concepts kind of going forward here. So first, the title, Melody or Witchcraft. That comes from a line that Emily Dickinson wrote in a letter to Thomas Wentworth Higginson in April of 1862. And the complete line goes like this. I'm going to read it to you so I get it right. I would like to learn. Can you tell me how to grow? Or is it unconveyed like melody or witchcraft? And it's one of my very favorite Dickinson lines of prose or poetry, honestly. And we're going to be dealing with that kind of thing of, how do we grow? How do we make art? And how do the voices of the past inform what we create today? So I'm interested in questions of the fluidity of time, creative ancestors, if you will, and where creative inspiration comes from and how it shows up today. Because maybe the then and the now is just one more binary that doesn't serve us anymore. So that's just a little bit of background. And we're going to start with Dickinson, but we're going to break out of that framework too and go beyond her to talk about these questions in sort of the broader scope of things. But Dickinson is an interesting kind of starting point because here we are 140 years after she's vanished from the planet, and she is so still incredibly popular internationally, and inspiring so many voices. So what's going to happen on the podcast is normally I will have more likely than not poets that I am going to be talking to who are going to be bringing a Dickinson poem that inspired them and also one of their own poems that was written in response to, because of, using lines from Emily Dickinson's work. So that's kind of a little bit of what to expect. And for those that aren't familiar with me, I will put a link to my website, etc., in any of the show notes here. But I'll just tell you that one of the pieces of information to know is that I'm a former tour guide with the Emily Dickinson Museum in Amherst, Massachusetts. I miss being there and doing that kind of work with the material history. And so this work is a little way to keep that piece of my heart alive. And it's okay if you don't know anything about Dickinson. If you think you don't want to know anything about Dickinson, I'm hoping that this appeals to all kinds of creative minds, which should be all of us. And I am sure looking forward to learning from my guests. For example, my guest today, Emma Wallace. Welcome again. Hello again. I will stop talking now.
Thank you for having me here. I'm really excited to talk Dickinson. That's actually where my name came from. My parents were trying to decide what name to give their first daughter, and this was the one they decided on because my name is actually Emily. I go by Emma as a musician, but they named me Emily after Emily Dickinson. So
Oh, wow. So I had no idea. That's amazing. That is super cool. Okay. Well, everything happens for a reason and serendipitous that we get to work together.
Right.
Um, So, I want you to kind of introduce yourself to us a little bit. And I have this line that I pulled from your bio on your website. And Emma's website is IamEmma.com, which of course we will also put in the show notes. But here is what you say, one of the lines in your little about paragraph. I find lyrical inspiration in literature from Shakespeare to Peter Pan, as well as tea and dessert items. So maybe you can kind of comment on that. Give us a little bit more about who you are.
Well, I've been writing songs for a very long time, and reading books for obviously even longer. And when I write, it sounds very not as like poetic in that sense, I guess. But I like to write when I write songs. It almost feels like an assignment, like from school, where I go, okay, I'm going to write a song from such and such perspective. I'm going to write a song about this. What if I were to take Rapunzel, but instead of wanting to escape, she wanted to be in the tower? Like, and so I like to. That's how I approach songwriting. And so my first couple albums were just like little bits and pieces of different inspiration. I did, a song based on Helena's Lament, like from Shakespeare and that sort of thing. But then as I started to write more, I just started to theme each album. And so like I theme an album around, Pride and Prejudice, and I themed an album around Peter Pan, and several albums around Alice in Wonderland, because that is there's a limited amount of inspiration lines there that you can just pick out and write around. And so that's how I've approached songwriting, is just by getting in the head. And even if it's a song that might not look like, from my earlier things, it might not look like it's based on a character, it probably is. Like it's probably a
Hmm.
character in a book that I've read that I'm like, oh, this is exactly how I think they would approach this situation. And I usually try to flip it, like I wrote one recently with like Macbeth, but instead of him feeling inspired to go and okay, yes, and I'm gonna go and do what he does. He goes, actually, I'm happy with where I'm at. Life is good. And then that's what the song is about, is him talking to his wife, being like, life is good. We don't need it. We don't need anymore. What we've got is beautiful. And so that's sort of how I approach songwriting, is just from that perspective.
Yeah, alternative endings or alternative paths, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. People put,
Huh.
yeah, exactly, in different situations. And then sometimes like with the Pride and Prejudice one, I do sort of cover the story. Like I have the two proposals of Mr. Darcy and stuff, but just written out in like how I would think if he were to have sung it, how he would have sung it, type thing. So
Oh, wow. So I'm so curious, like what your bookshelf might look like. Like, what's on there? What's at the top, or what gets pulled off on a regular basis?
well, I have a lot of kids books, like classic kids books. Like right now, turning around, I can see like The Secret Garden. I have, a bunch of like the Borrowers. I have some, and then of course I have lots of classic novels, Dickens and Austen, and poetry. I have Browning. So I have like a big mix of that sort of thing. I really love historical novels. That's sort of where I like to live. So, and again,
Hmm.
like lots of kids books. Like I dream one day of opening up a kids bookstore, my husband,
Oh,
because
wow.
I love kids books. So
Right. And so it sounds like you maybe like that mix of history, but then, or like it's fiction work, but with the historical bent, and then you take it in a different potential direction again.
right, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people who read are fascinated with history. It we can. I mean, I like the idea of like vacationing here and going to different places, but it seems so. The wonderful thing about reading is just the of course the Emily Dickinson poem as well, but it's just to be able to go in the frigate of the book and experience a totally different life. And what an amazing thing to be able to live through somebody else's experience, and especially through time. It seems like an amazing, that's what I love about reading. It's just amazing. So
Yeah, yeah. And there I feel like pretty much on every one of these episodes, there is the potential to hit on about a dozen perfect Dickinson lines that I won't be able to recall precisely. So all of that will be in the show notes. But yes, there is no frigate like a book to take you lands away, I think, is the first line of that poem. But yeah, I mean, she called books like, her, was it her strongest friends? Once again, that's a bad paraphrase. And I will put all of those notes in the notes. But yeah, so you are a perfect Dickinson candidate. What drew you specifically to Dickinson, or how were you introduced to Dickinson, and what were your first reactions? Did it come up, like, was it a school assignment, or how did you meet her?
well, as I said, my dad was an English teacher, and my mom was an English lover, like English book lover. She loved to read, and we would. I was actually homeschooled, and we would go to this thing where they would have like the book rejects from the library, this big warehouse that he had access to as a teacher, and we paid by the big paper bag, and we'd fill up the bag with books, and my mom would just go through and just we would come home with just like bags and bags and bags of books. And and some of the books were like, she would get like textbooks for us as well, so we would learn from textbooks that were of like mix and match in terms of years. But but because of that, we had so many books. So we read like Caddy Woodlawn and Carolyn Haywood. But one of the but my parents had always loved Emily Dickinson, as I said. Like my mom used to quote that "I'm Nobody" poem all the time. She loved it. But we got a massive Emily Dickinson poetry book. Like it's like, I don't even know, 4 inches, and it had all of her writings in it. And I just remember her being like, "This is what you were named after." And so I just took it and I just read it. And I was fairly little, and some of the themes were, um, you know, darker than what you often run into as a kid. I mean, if you read enough fairy tales, which we read a lot of fairy tales as well, you do run into a lot of darker themes as well. But I loved the way that she talks about it without fear. And I had been raised in like a very religious upbringing, and so a lot of things like with death and misbehaving are couched in fear, and I don't really get that from Emily Dickinson's writings. Like she can talk about death very comfortably, very affectionately almost, and we're here on earth, and she feels like God loves us, and there's just like an overall benevolence to nature and to life, and it just felt so safe and like refreshing to read and I remember reading that and just feeling like, oh wait, everything's okay, everything's good, and it's not like there's, you do this and something bad's going to happen to you. It just felt very, I just remember being a little kid and reading that and feeling very comforted by her poetry. So
That's fascinating. Yeah. So who would you say is your Emily? Is it kind of the spiritual seeker? Is it the poet? Is it the, I don't know, cook? I'm gonna guess maybe not the cook, but I just feel like there's so many aspects of her that that kind of can rise to the top. Is there kind of one that is for you primary?
well, I think what I love about the way she writes is it's so conversational. It's a mix. It's whimsical, but whimsical oftentimes without a sense of affectedness. She's not being. She looks. It's. I always feel like it sort of sounds condescending when people say a childlike view, because I feel like it's said in a patronizing tone, but I don't feel like that's for her. I feel like it's just from having spent a lot of time around children, is they're able to look at things just the way that it is without any sort of trying to make, you can you know, don't have to worry about a kid pretending to be nice to you, you know, or pretending to
Hmm.
like something. They like it or they don't like it. And I feel that sort of sense from Emily Dickinson of just being like very open and very, very accessible and very conversational, without trying to like throw in extra words to make it fancier or anything. And yet still able to express such beautiful and deep and complex thoughts, but in a very conversational and easily accessible way.
Yeah.
So when I write lyrics, like I often try to like I I tend to go like I've had because I work with producers to sometimes to do collaborations, and they will want more. They'll say, "Can you do something a bit more figurative? Can you do something like a bit more flowery type thing?" And
Hmm.
I just like the way that Emily Dickinson, she does have, you know, really beautiful imagery in it, but it still feels very grounded to me. It still feels
Hmm.
very accessible and very, again, like conversational, like just like in a way that you would talk if you talked beautifully all the time, you know, like she does. So, so that's what I think that's what I like the most. Is just that sort of, and that sense also of like accepting, I guess, so this is like like there's a 16 Emily's, no, but the one that's the, I think the best is this, I'll just go back with that one. It's just the sense of conversational, and accessibility, like that sort of aspect to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, I mean, she adored children and she had such a mischievous streak to her that aligned with children. And it also strikes me in what you said, you know, how we use this term childlike in almost a derogatory way. I feel like one of the things I'm interested in exploring is yeah, kind of bringing the times together, as you know, as you've sort of implied and referenced as well, without being like, oh gosh, you know, look at those folks in the past, they were actually quite modern, or you know, it's like this kind of backhanded compliment, as if we've figured everything
Right.
out, like it's just a linear arrow and here we are now, we're so much further along. So I want to kind of pull that out to for I don't know, investigation, interrogation, that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, yeah. So that's great. I mean, I think a lot of people would argue with you, though, that that Dickinson is conversational. Like, what would you say to the people that are, you know, who, and you know, I guess rightfully so, talk about how difficult Dickinson is to read?
Um,
It's just not, maybe it's
well,
just not true for
I
you.
think it's, yeah, it's not, I mean, it's, I feel, I understand. I think that there is a distance between, I mean, I guess part of the thing is if you compare Dickinson to, say, Walt Whitman, if you're looking through different poetry, you know, Shakespeare, obviously, Brown, like I feel like Byron, you look at the different poetry, hers, first of all, comes across as much more conversational, much easier to,
Personal,
you
I
know,
guess, right?
absorb. Yeah. It's just, but I guess I don't know, and maybe it's just like an intuition that I should have, you know, I should look into more. But it feels, she just feels the way she talks. It just sounds very, um, very much like you're just sitting next to her, and she's just sort of expounding on an observation, you know, a worm in the
Mm,
grass or a bee on the flower, and and yet there is obviously, you know, figurative language, and she is not speaking exactly like, okay, I see a bee on the flower. She does go on to, you know, and to use a different, you know, metaphor, but it's it doesn't feel like she's trying to be grandiose. I guess what I guess, and it's not right for me to place an intention upon her, but I feel like you can tell what the intention behind her poetry is honest and genuine. It's not written to impress. It's not written to uh to even, I mean, to force you to go on some sort of, you know, mental journey that's very like flowery. It's very, I feel like she intends for her poetry to be accessible for it to, and that comes through to me. So I understand that there might be a language, a difference in language, and especially with the, like you were talking about with time, there is that barrier in terms of vocabulary. We don't really talk like that now. We don't say gambrels and that sort of thing. So, but just because we don't talk like that doesn't mean that that's not something that is, like, for her, felt like a very easy concept to talk about.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's great. I love it. I love that, yeah, that you have that connection. And yeah, I can definitely see that voice kind of, that friendly voice in your ear. Well, I would love it if you would read I Dwell in Possibility.
Okay. I dwell in possibility, a fairer house than prose, more numerous of windows, superior of doors, of chambers as the cedars, impregnable of eye, and for an everlasting roof that gambols of the sky. Of visitors the fairest, for occupation this, the spreading wide my narrow hands to gather paradise.
Thank you. Lovely. Yeah, I have to, it's like watching a concert. Like I have to like stop myself from saying lines with you as you're reading. Yeah, and what made you pick this poem? And is there something that you have made that you use this poem in, or some inspiration from this poem?
Well, this was one of the poems that I did use in the album. So it's the
Yeah.
final song in the album. So I did use that. I love it. It feels so liberating. And I know that, like, when I was reading about I mean, you would know more since you are just a scholar of her, but
Oh, I'm
is
not a
that,
scholar. Oh, no, no, no,
oh,
definitely not a scholar.
it's
That's another category. That's a different podcast.
as a different but is it just, it feels like at different times in my life when I feel like things are really, really not good, it's because I've stopped seeing the possibility of all the good things that could happen. And so to me, this poem is just I don't know, like, exuberantly optimistic. Just basically, we it sounds like it's the sky. There's nothing to limit us. We have,
Mhm.
anything could happen. And so that's why, like, whenever I start to feel like stuck in life, I love to return to this poem and just go, look, paradise could happen at any moment. It's all from, it's just the openness of where we are right now and what can happen. And so that's what I love about it.
Mm, mm. And you mentioned the album. We haven't actually told folks yet. You do have an EP where you use a group of Dickinson poems and turn them into song. And was that 2019 that that came out? Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
2020.
Oh, okay. 2020, that pivot year. There it is, the hinge. Um, well, beautiful. And I wonder if you would grace us with I'm Nobody. And then I would love to talk about it a little bit. And like I said, I'm so excited that this will be our theme song. And I love your take on it. So yeah, I'm really interested for everybody to hear it and hear your process around it.
Okay. I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell, they'd advertise. You know, I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell, they'd advertise. You know, how dreary to be somebody. How Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell, they'd advertise, you know.
Yay! Thank you so much. It was great to hear you do that live. So beautiful. And it dawns on me that really this poem kind of fits a little bit into, it's often offered up to kids, for example, but your version is not at all childlike. It's got just that kind of a bit of spook, a bit of edge that I really was drawn to. And maybe could you talk about your choices?
Well, I guess part of the thing it felt when she talks about it there, it feels like I remember when I first had released it to my patrons, some people were sort of like, that is not the take I had on that song. and and I think it's just, but for me it felt very like she's sharing a secret. So that was the sort of initial feeling behind it, is that kind of secretiveness of being a part of the, I don't know exactly how to say it. She's sharing something with somebody else, and it's not accepted. It's not what, what we're supposed to try, what we're supposed to want. And so there's a bit of, I don't know, like you had mentioned before, mischievousness to it. It's not an I'm nobody, in a sense. Like when I had initially read it, I think I had thought of it as a sort of almost being self-deprecating. But when I reread it as an adult, when I was figuring out what I'm going to do for this album, I wanted to feel. I reread it and I'm like, I don't get any sense of self-deprecation from it at all. It's
Mhm.
like she's holding, like she's got a treasure of being private, being secretive, being tucked away, and finding somebody else in that. Like when you are, if we go back to a childlike type thing, which I know this is not a more, upbeat kind of, that kind of kids music, but the sense of like hide and seek is the sort of feeling you get, where we've got like, hold on one second. I'm so sorry. My phone is okay. Where you have a hiding place and somebody else comes and joins you in that hiding place, And
Mm,
so that was sort of like the feeling I got from it.
right, right. And I'm guessing too that, you do a fair number of covers, of course, right? And making something your own while also honoring the original author or songwriter or whoever it is. I'm guessing those two things are not mutually exclusive.
Right. Well, and when I do cover, I always try to make it different. Not because I feel like I remember I had taught a student and she said that she felt like when you do a cover, out of respect for the original, you should keep it as close to the original as possible. And I said, I
Ah.
feel like out of respect for the original, you should keep it as different, because you're trying to say that what they've done is wonderful enough that it can stand alone without what they like. It stands alone on its own, and it doesn't need the context of, like I did a cover of Dreams by the Cranberries, and it's just got like all these drums in it, and there's, it's the way she sings and everything is very, uh she's got like that sort of primal, like the way that she sings so powerfully. And like I took the whole song and made it like really quiet and really subtle, because I think the lyrics and the tune can be interpreted that way. And I would want someone to take my song, if I wrote it, and be like, okay, if you just strip it down to the melody and the lyrics, they are strong enough without anything else that goes along, that we can add our part to it and make it something that is still beautiful and touches people in a completely different way.
Mm, hmm. Wow. Yeah. So, um, I'm wondering, maybe as just kind of a question to wrap up, going back to the quote about melody or witchcraft, it's so interesting that melody is included in one of the things that might be unconveyed. Is it unteachable? And it's kind of a funny question, because that's really what Dickinson is asking, or at least ostensibly asking, right? She's doing a lot of things in that letter to Higginson that we could talk about for a really long time, but ostensibly in the question, right? Oh, is this even possible? Can you help me with this? And I find that so interesting. I hadn't actually thought about it before, but I'm just coming to me now. I mean, people ask me all the time because I teach poetry. Yeah. Can you teach poetry? Can you teach that? And I look at them and I'm like, okay, like you have to make that decision. Like, how much time do we have? Does this person really care about the answer? Where are we going with this? Like, at what level response am I going to give? Am I going to give the "we're in a pub" answer? Am I going to, give the philosophical, late night group answer? So yeah. Maybe just in terms of song, and of course, poetry and song come from the same background, right? And poems were sung. Maybe you could, I don't know, just offer us a little bit uh, of how you teach, or what is and isn't teachable.
Well, that's a really great question because I um I feel like, you know how Picasso says that every child is an artist and they
Nope, but
just
tell me.
have it taught out of them. Um, I think it was Picasso who said that every child is an artist. The challenge is staying an artist as you grow older.
Yeah.
You know that if you go into a kindergarten class and say, "How many of you are artists?" I do that all the time. I would teach piano lessons to start off. "Oh, are you an artist?" Because as soon as the kid goes, "Yes, oh yes, I'm an artist," then you go, "Okay, oh well, so then this will be easy for you." That's what I always, this will be easy for you to learn
Aha.
piano because a piano is an
Great.
art. But if you ask them at that age, are they good at math? Are they good at art? Almost every child says, "Yes, I'm a good artist." They know it in some sense. And that of course dies off as you get older and older and older. And you ask a teenager if they've chosen to do art, then they'd say yes. But if they're not, if their interests lie elsewhere, they won't say that. Whereas in kindergarten, everybody thinks they're an artist. And
Yeah.
what's odd to me is I had started a while ago where I would ask students, like children, where I would write out sheet music for them, and I'd be like, "Why don't you write a song? So you play a song for me, and you write a song, and I'll write it out for you in sheet music." And do you know, all kids can write songs, and my students will do this thing. "Oh, I wrote a new song this week, Miss Emma," and so they'll play the song for me, and some of the tunes are not what I would like, they're very, but every child can write a tune. Every child can write a melody. And you do hear, like the one that was just written. She was working on Raindrops and Roses, and so it definitely had like that influence in it. But it was different
Mm.
and had other aspects to it. She's 7, and I think the thing is that we. This is gonna sound so. I don't know what it's gonna sound like, but you don't really teach. You can learn you can what's the word, experiment to become different at writing melody, listen to more music and create melody. But I think the capacity to write melody is there. It's like that's what we're born with, and we just learn. Oh, we're not songwriters. Oh, we don't know you don't know how to write a song. Like, why would you know how to do that? And so we think that that's something other from us, and yet the truth is that almost all, I think anybody can write melody. I did train myself how to do it, with like a special way that I had come up with, but I think it's innate. It's one of those things that we just have to be okay with. First couple songs are not going to sound fabulous, maybe, but you just keep working on it, and it will be. And there again, there are different techniques you can use, but I do feel like it's a talent that all of us have access to.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I feel like you're talking about a couple of different things, just in terms of how society in general values or doesn't artists, and what frameworks our society is built around, which are not necessarily artistic frameworks. Um, which I think, I hope, is one of the reasons why these conversations are important. But also, you said something else in there besides talking about, the innateness of songwriting or of some of these kinds of arts. You also said, we listen to more music, right? And the child who's, she's working on a particular song, and of course that gets wrapped into what she's doing, which is also what we're talking about, right?
Right.
So the more we read, the more we listen, all of that is, it's this idea of there's nothing new under the sun. And the sun amazingly has come out in Ireland. When is
Yeah.
that going to happen, except when I'm on a Zoom call where I don't want to be obliterated by the light? Thank you, Ireland. But anyway, yeah, so there's nothing new under the sun, right? But we are either, whether we know it or not, always using voices of the past, I guess. We could say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for talking to me. I'm just so excited that your music is going to be part of the podcast. And yeah, I'm excited about this collaboration, and hopefully we can talk again.
Yeah, thank you so much. I loved being here. It was really great to be able to talk. Emily Dickinson, thank you.
Yeah. Bye, everybody.